would recommend this course to everybody. I think it's good for new agents like myself.
I wanted to learn the secret that all agents had, all successful agents had. And I got more than that.
Another day one. Monday, another day one. Start every single day as if it was your first day, and you'll be successful.
Signature!
Good morning, Signature Real Estate Group, and welcome to our sales meeting. You missed the previous sales meeting we just had a moment ago. Believe it or not, this is my first meeting hosted in the new Northwest office. I appreciate that. It's not the first meeting held in the Northwest office, but it is my first meeting. So, got a lot of great stuff planned for you. Did you guys know that real estate agents outside of Signature Real Estate Group sometimes never read? Have you heard that? They don't read the contract, they don't read the information, they don't read what they've agreed to, they don't read the prelim, they don't read the inspection report, they don't read the appraisal. And so we're going to talk today about all of the things they just don't read and get some of your feedback. But before we do that, let's do some wants and needs. Who has a new listing that they want to talk about? Anyone? Anyone in the audience? Anyone have a new listing? Anyone at all? Going once. Got a new listing? All right, tell us all about it. Got to talk a little bit louder. They can't hear you in the back.
3,248 square foot, single story, painted desert. The owner of the builder was a custom home builder. He lost it in the last market crash.
Wow.
My client bought it for $370. It's like a new model home, but it's dated 2005.
What's the price?
Good on it, 780.
780 in painted desert, former model home. Is that what you said? Perfect. Fantastic.
Not a model home.
Custom home. Former custom home.
Doors are all solid doors, that kind of thing.
That's important.
Everywhere, like 7-inch doors.
Yeah, that's awesome. And painted desert?
Painted desert.
Painted desert. Fantastic. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, the 3-story right around the corner at Fort Apache and Elkhorn is 2,200 square feet, 379.
Fantastic. Anybody else? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Now we're going to bring up Shelly for the mortgage moment. And I've been told by our tech crew back there that's pointing at me really fast, you got to speak really loud around this little microphone here so that people there can hear us.
Yay, happy tax day, everyone.
Hey!
How many of you filed your taxes?
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Okay, so the rest of you are going to head out after the sales meeting to go drop your taxes off. All right, well, happy Tuesday, everyone. So a couple things. First, I want to bring up Jennifer Pike.
Yay, Jennifer!
So a lot of you see her on emails. She is the magician behind the scenes and behind those emails. You can also welcome her, jpike@prosperitylending.com. Just send a quick email over to her to say, I saw you on video. Louder? Louder. Okay, so I'm going to do this. How about this? Is that better? Okay. No, not better. Okay, all right. Anyway, so I just wanted to bring her up here just in case she pops into an office. You know who she is. If you ever have any questions, she is truly on the other side of an email. Just email in. She can respond to anything, deals and pipelines. She works hand in hand with Amy at A to Z Transactions. So I just wanted to really bring her up. Do you have anything you want to say? If you say it, you have to say it loud into the puck.
I don't know what to say. I wasn't prepared to talk.
She's going to be taking the reverse mortgages training that we have. So how many of you have always wanted to do a reverse mortgage or have clients that want to?
We have one. We have one up here in front.
You're not on that. So she's going to be taking the training today. So stay tuned next week. We will be rolling out what that training or the program information on that, rates and all that good stuff. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Shelley.
All right, I'm going to also share with you this. Write down this date, May 2nd and 3rd, 2 dates. Okay, and then May 10th. So May 2nd and the 3rd is when the next Federal Reserve meeting is going to be. that is where they're going to come back out and say whether or not they're going to increase the short-term interest rates. If they do come out and increase the short-term interest rates, I think everybody's preparing for about 0.25%. Remember, that does not mean that that's your mortgage interest rates that they're changing, whether they increase it or keep it the same. Write down May 10th. May 10th is when the CPI, which is our Consumer Price Index report, is going to be coming out. There is indication that rates are going to come down that time frame. Now, we are not going to go back to the 3% in that moment in time, but there's a lot of economists who are actually saying that May 10th will be a great indicator, depending on what that CPI report comes out as, that we will start to see interest rates go down. And they've already done that in the last 5 weeks. So write that down, circle that, pay close attention to that date to see whether or not our economists are correct in that state, but also to be prepared. Because if interest rates continue to go down, which right now we're in the mid 6s, 6.25 to 6.5, and we get into the 5% range, what's that going to do for your buyers today? What's it going to do for the inventory today? From a payment standpoint, even that 3/4 is a difference of almost $100, $75 to $100, depending on their loan amount. That's like $30,000 to $50,000 in sales price purchasing power that they have. So be prepared for those dates. Start working towards that now. May 2nd and 3rd, and then May 10th. And if you have any questions at all, you can always reach out to one of us, Jennifer, myself, Gabby, Myra, Tony, and Jared. Any questions for me today? No? All right. Have an amazing
Shelley,
day.
round of applause. So I'm gonna bug Shelley later in the meeting to come back up. I didn't tell her what we're gonna talk about, and so that's gonna be a really good time. You'll definitely wanna watch her facial expressions as I ask her questions. I want to thank Ryan for being here with Typeport. Everybody give Ryan a round of applause. Ryan and I had the special honor of being on a sales meeting last week that was just, I think, one of the better sales meetings that I personally have done, even though Ryan participated and all that, but it was really good. So let's talk about the RPA. Right now we're seeing a ton of purchase agreements come across, and we're seeing new agents, seasoned agents, agents that have been in the business for over 30 years, and now you finally have the chance to work with them before they retire, right? I always hear that from agents all the time. And so I got one yesterday where every clause in the contract that had a date that was supposed to go in it or a number was blank. Okay, so 0 for the inspection, 0 for the appraisal, 0 for the loan contingency. They didn't put in one date. In that scenario, what do you do? So you would send it back to him and say, bad job, you'd circle it in red, just like my high school English teacher. That's what you're telling me? So I thought about that. I thought about that a lot and thought, you know, if I send it back to them, am I doing a disservice to my client? Because when they brought that offer over to me, right now there's no inspection contingency, there's no appraisal contingency, and there's no loan contingency. But I agree with you. I think that what's going to happen is we're going to get 10 days into the transaction, and all of a sudden they're going to say, you know what, we're scheduling our inspection. I'm going to be like, what inspection? You have 0 days in there. And they're going to be like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. That was a mistake. So Dave will confirm back there that there's a clause in the law that says if you write a purchase agreement and you put in nothing or you omit that date, it goes against the person who wrote it. And so effectively, you've written a purchase agreement that has 0 contingencies for your client. Do you think your client's going to be happy about that? No. And so I've always treated everyone, like it says in our code of ethics, the way that I would want to be treated. And I'm going to tell you about 8 years ago, I wrote a purchase agreement that was a VA purchase agreement for my in-laws, right? Want to make friends with your in-laws every chance you get. And I forgot to put in on the first page their down payment. And it was not a big mistake. It didn't like change the contractual terms, but you know, I'm a seasoned veteran in the business. I teach the purchase agreement, and I screwed up. And the agent on the other side sent me an email and said, hey, I just want to make sure, I'm pretty sure you meant to put a down payment in there. Would you like to fix that before I present it to my client? And so after that happened, I kind of thought, you know what? That was fair. Now, if I would have said, no, I sent you my offer, send it to the client, then I got everything that I deserved. Right? And so like Stephanie was talking about, I personally believe that you should give everyone the initial benefit of the doubt. Hey, listen, I got your purchase agreement. I just want to make sure this is what you want me to present to my client. Now, I'm not going to point to the inspection contingency, and I'm not going to point to the appraisal contingency and say, hey, dum-dum, you put 0. But I'm going to at least give them the benefit of the doubt. And if I told you that, would you start looking at the agreement wondering, what the heck's he talking about? And so for me, that seems like fair. I mean, would you think that's fair?
Yeah.
Anyone mad at me? Like, you're like, I can't believe you do that, right? The only reason I say to do it that way is because down the road, if my client gets upset or something happens, and they start going to question it legally, and they said, well, wow, my agent put himself out there and didn't really care to protect me because the way this agreement's written, that buyer had no contingencies. Technically, that was the best case scenario for me as the client. And so the other thing I noticed is that as you go through the contract, have you ever had an argument with the other agent? Show of hands. Anybody? A few people? Yeah? Well, you know, it just so happens that every once in a while the tension gets hot, you know, and they get all excited and they start sending out these emails. Does everything go well when you start sending crappy emails? No. Why? Why not? Everything's in writing. What happens in those emails? What do you feel?
Ego's been triggered.
Say that again?
The ego.
The ego has been triggered, right? And so because my subject line and my, you know, the signature at the bottom of my email is pretty damn impressive, Russ. I mean, like, it looks good. I've got titles that you can't even believe. Prince Charles is the only person that has more titles than I do. Tom's signature line is even better. I mean, it just goes on for 2 pages in the email that says okay, right? So my whole point with that is that, you know, I kind of find out that when things go to email, it usually is where the conversation deteriorates because people dehumanize it, right? But why do we use email? It's a paper trail because we know that people are going to say stupid things, and we want to have a record of those stupid things so that when we're in a hearing panel or we're in court, we have a chain of events that says, hey, listen, I did it the right way. I'm going to tell you right now that I have fixed more issues in my real estate business by picking up the phone and apologizing even when I wasn't wrong. I've been married for 16 years, and I have apologized and been wrong every single day. Okay? And she's sitting in front, upset, and I'm probably wrong. Okay? But the whole point of it is, it's better to try to make the bridge happen between you and the other client than to be right. You can be right, or you can get paid. Which would you prefer? I'd rather get paid, right? And then I'll be right when I'm back at my office by myself. So let's talk for a minute about RPA inspection provisions. So if I purchase a house and I'm in my RPA, I put inspection to be like 7 days. And does that mean I have to do a home inspection? Why not? I put in there that I'm going to do one. I have the right to do one. I have the option to do one.
If you don't do it, you don't do it.
If I don't do it, I don't do it.
You're not obligated.
I'm not obligated, but I can. Do you have to let me into the house to do it?
Yes.
You do? But what if it's like a holiday or something?
It's within that calendar.
So the contract actually says in the RPA that you're going to make the property available to me for me to do an inspection report, and that's the whole point. Nobody reads that, and so when it comes to the client saying, hey, we're having an issue, we need something to happen, it says right there when the seller signed the contract that they're going to make it available and they're going to turn on all the utilities. Have you ever gone to do an inspection and some of the utilities are off? Isn't that infuriating? Did you know in the contract it says that you as the buyer's agent are also going to confirm that they're on? When would you do that? Right? Not when you get there at the house and you're like, oh my gosh, the gas is on. I have a guy in my phone list in my phone that works for the gas company that I met at a property. His name is Mark McGuire. I kid you not, he doesn't play baseball. But I have him on speed dial because during the REO market and the short sale market, there were so many homes that we would go to that things would just be off. And this guy is the area service tech for the Northwest, right? And if you called him, he would answer the phone and he would come out to the property within like an hour. Best person I ever met in my life for real estate, right? But as we go through the inspection report, if I want to cancel, but I haven't done a home inspection, what would you say? What would you say to the other party? I want to cancel, but I haven't done an inspection. I'm in my 7 days. Doesn't matter, I can just do it? Yep. Would everyone agree with that? let's poll the audience, okay? I'm gonna ask you to pick one side or the other. All those who believe I could just cancel with no problem, raise your hand. Okay? All those who don't believe, raise your hand. All those who aren't awake yet, raise your hand. Just the attorney. Okay, great. So you're absolutely right, I could cancel. I had an attorney years and years and years and years ago that taught a class, and in the class that he said the whole premise of the inspection is for me to be able to go and feel how the property is. If I go to the property and I step out in the backyard and I'm standing in the middle of the backyard and I see the wind blow or hear it and I see the leaves go past me and I don't like the way the wind blew in the backyard, I have the right under that provision to cancel the agreement and get my money back. And it says that I can do it. It says that once I notify you of it, you have to give me my money back without any additional documents, which we know that never works. But I'm just pointing out it says that. Would everyone agree? Anyone want to argue about it? Okay, so why do we have such a problem under cancellation of the inspection? Why do people fight it so hard? Why do you think it is? What did you say earlier? Ego. It always comes down to ego. How dare you put my property under contract and cancel the escrow? Now, if you get upset, what do you think happens with the client? They mirror exactly how you feel because they think that that's the right course of action. Let me just give you a piece of advice. If I had a contract tomorrow and I'm the listing agent and the buyer's agent cancels, the first thing I would do is I would notify my client in a phone call, say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I have some unfortunate news. We just found out the property's canceling. I'm sending you an email confirming our position in the contract. And then I would send them an email with that provision in the contract that they sign, that page, and I would highlight it. Highlighters are the best thing in real estate. And I would say, this is our contractual obligation under the contract. We need to return their earnest money. Is that fair? Does that make sense? How often do you think people actually put things in writing to their client that confirms what the contract says, not how they feel? Hardly ever. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the inspection report. I actually pulled up the RPA. I had to find one. And so let's see here. I want to ask you a question. If I cancel under the inspection provision, do I have to give you a copy of the home inspection? All the people that say yes, raise your hand. All the people that say no, raise your hand. All the people that aren't sure, raise your hand. Okay, so if I cancel the contract because of the home inspection, it says in the contract that I will provide you a copy of the home inspection, but only if I cancel because of it. Why do you think that is? Come on, tell me something loud. Yeah, you want to know what's wrong with the property. You think it's a material fact that I was in the purchase agreement with you. I did a home inspection. I found something so horrible, so wrong with that home that I backed out of the deal. Do you think that's a material fact to the seller? That's the whole point around that. So I just want to read this to you real quick. During the due diligence period, buyer shall take such action as buyer deems necessary to determine whether the property is satisfactory to the buyer, but not limited to whether the property is insurable to the buyer's satisfaction, whether there are unsatisfactory conditions surrounding or otherwise affecting the property, such as location of a flood zone. How would you determine that the property is in a flood zone? Like wait for people to float on by? I mean, what would you look for? Right? We would be able to find these things on title reports that they may pop up on. We'd be able to do some research on our own. They're actually working in the MLS right now to put overlay maps onto the MLS so that you would be able to have an overlay map to tell you where they're at. One of the other things that's in here, I said flood zone already, right? How about airport noise? What does that mean? Like, where can you be in Las Vegas right now that you don't hear a plane? Have you been to the Board of Realtors lately? Like, we put it in a flight path. Like, they drop people off as they're going over, right? So that's a reason I could cancel. Property zoning. Do you really worry about zoning in residential neighborhoods? Do you guys remember over by the airport where right on the other side of the airport for years and years and years there was a massive residential neighborhood? And they decided that, you know what, we need to expand the airport. So they used eminent domain and they seized all of the homes and paid off the homeowners because they changed the zoning, and then they put up a massive shopping center, right? These things have actually happened, and so again, if you're worried about zoning changes in the area, that's a reason that I could cancel. And then it goes on to talk about every single thing with the home. Square footage. Wait a minute. I went to purchased the home, I knew it was 2,000 square feet, but now I can use square footage to cancel under. 2,000 square feet doesn't feel like it used to, right? The home floor plan doesn't make me all bubbly like it used to. So again, what I'm telling you is I want you to take the contract. It is your ninja superpower as a real estate agent, and I want you to start using it to smooth over all of the issues that you have. When you call me up and say, Chris, I have a broker problem. I need to talk to you right away. You've got to call me. You always want me to call you. That's cool too. And I got to talk to you right away. We got to discuss what's happening. The first thing I do is I pull up the RPA that you signed and I read what's in it. And then usually what I do as a broker, and I know Janet does this and Tom does this when he actually thinks of it. All I do is I take that clause in the contract and I send it to the other agent and I highlight what they've already agreed to. How do you argue with that? 50 to 60% of the time, that's the end of the conversation because you can't argue with what's in writing. Okay, so let's talk about the appraisal condition. If I cancel under the appraisal condition, do I have to give you a copy of the appraisal? Okay, how many people say yes? Raise your hand. How many people say no? Raise your hand. How many people still aren't sure where they're at? Raise your hand. So we're going to read this right here. I'm going to go to the appraisal conditions section. Please hold. All right, it says, buyer's obligation to purchase the property is a contingent upon the buyer, upon the property appraising for not less than the purchase price. If after the completion of the appraisal by a licensed appraiser, so it can't be your brother, sister's cousin's mother that comes out and says she thinks it's worth this, buyer receives written notice from the lender or the appraiser that the property is appraised for less than the purchase price, a notice of appraised value. Buyer may attempt to renegotiate if it does not, or cancel the RPA by providing written notice to the seller with a copy of the appraisal. So if I cancel under that provision, I have to give you a copy. Now I understand that who bought the appraisal? The buyer. I actually got into an altercation with the Homeowners Inspection Association. Did you know that they have an association? They meet at the top of a PTs. There's like 7 or 8 guys that get around and they're all home inspectors, different companies, and it's called, I think it's called Sweaty. I think that's actually the acronym, Sweaty, but I'm probably wrong in that. Snappy, that's it, Snappy. I was trying to remember, they gave me a coffee cup and I just thought Sweaty, that was it. Hold it together. Okay, so I lost where the hell I was going with the Sweaty. I had an altercation because they said, you know, once you pay for a home inspection report, it says in our contract with the client, that report cannot be passed on to any other party. But who's that agreement between? The home inspector and the buyer. What's ironic is the purchase agreement that the buyer writes through you says that under certain terms, I must contractually pass these items on to secondary parties. And so what's interesting is they were really upset that agents were taking advantage of their service by passing these inspection reports on that may cause someone not to get another home inspection, right? But again, I reminded them that it doesn't really matter in some cases because it's a contractual obligation of what the contract says. But again, no one ever told them that because no one ever read the contract. So in this case, if the home doesn't appraise, you got to provide me with a copy of the appraisal showing me it didn't. What happens if I don't do my appraisal in that timeline? Yeah. The last day at 5 p.m., I send out an extension that hasn't been signed by anybody, and I hope for the best, right? If I don't do it, it just means that the property no longer is contingent upon the value, but what's my only risk? What am I risking right now if I pass it? EMD, right? So do you think the amount of money that I put in for EMD matters? So when it says in the listing $10,000 for earnest money on a $400,000 house, do you just write whatever it says in the MLS? How do you come up with that amount? That one. What do you do? What's kind of your rule of thumb? How much are you going to say? About 1% of the sales price? I would agree with that. I think that's probably a rule of thumb for many people. Do you feel strong about 1% of $400,000 house? What is that, $4 grand? I feel pretty good about $4 grand. Do you know you can phase earnest money? Do you know I could start with like $2 grand today and see how it goes if you accept my offer. And then I could give you $2,000 next week, and I could give you $2,000 the week after that once we pass our contingencies. You guys know you can do that? It's a contract superpower that I have the ability to do. And do you know what the best part is? I could actually make it down payment and not earnest money. Guess what happens if I cancel? Down payment comes back to you immediately with no other documents from escrow, where earnest money has to be accepted by both parties and signed off on. So what would you rather have? If I gave you a $50,000 down payment up front or $4,000 in earnest money? Consider that. I'm just putting it out there for you to think about it. Okay, let's go on to the next clause. Shelly's getting nervous. She's like, what is he going to talk to me about? Personal property. This is one of my favorite things in a contract, right? We go and we view the home, and the antique chandelier that your family brought over from the Mayflower is in the living room, and someone asks for it in the purchase agreement, and they're really upset, because right when the home closed, during the walkthrough, you took it down and took it away. So let's just read what's actually written in the contract. Anyone here, just a show of hands, ever had an argument over a water softener? Anybody? Okay. You're going to be floored when I read this. Here's what is existing in the property right now. Fixtures and fittings, including but not limited to electrical, mechanical, lighting, plumbing, heating fixtures, ceiling fans. Did you know ceiling fans is hard written in here? So if there's a ceiling fan in the house when this contract's written and you don't counter it out, it must go along with the property, right? I've had ceiling fans missing. Fireplace inserts. What the hell would you do with it if you took it, right? I'm gonna take it to my other house. Gas logs, grates, solar power systems. Have you ever had an argument over solar power? We actually have a tremendous amount of these coming up as a brokerage because people don't read. And what happens is it says in this clause that that fixture will be transferred free of all liens, and it's hard written into the purchase agreement. It's not even something I could actually scribble out. It's hard written in. So we have solar built-in appliances, because you will rip those out of the wall, including ranges, ovens, window, door screens, awnings, shutters, window coverings. What is a window covering? Curtains, blinds. It's in here. Attached floor coverings. Like, how the hell are you going to take that? Attached floor coverings. It's attached. Television antenna. If you still have a television antenna on your house, we got a bigger problem. Satellite dishes. Private integrated telephone system. It's not like the president's black phone or red phone on his private integrated telephone system. Air coolers and conditioners. Pool spa equipment you can't take with you. Garage door openers. How many times have you gone to a home to transfer the keys and they say, oh, we can't find the garage door opener? They contractually agreed to leave them, right? Remote controls, mailbox, in-ground landscaping must stay. Trees, shrubs, water softeners are hard written in that you will leave them with the property. Water purifiers. Give me an example of a water purifier. RO system, it says it right here. Security system alarms. I have a property that just closed this last week. Client owns the alarm in the house, and the client told the new purchaser they got to sign up for a new service, right? And so they were going to start, the service itself was going to start taking things out because they said, oh, those are ours. And we put into our contract that the client, the seller, would pay off any obligation because it says in the very beginning of this clause, the following items will be transferred free of liens with the sale of the property with no real value unless stated otherwise. Did you also know that this same clause is in the listing agreement? Why do you think it's there? Why do you think it tells the seller these items that are hard written in? So that they know that it's there, so that I have the job of asking them the question, if you want to take this water softener that's so important to you because it makes you feel good when you drink the water or when you take your shower, now is the time. Some people drink the water, I'm just telling you. Now is the time to tell me so that I know when we get a contract I need to counter it out. I just want to put this out to you because I was in a dispute with another agent in this company over a stove. Did I mention stoves? I did. And so they took the stove. We were the buyer's agent. I looked at the contract and the counter, and no one ever countered out the stove as being removed. And all I did was send this over to them, and guess what happened? They were really excited when they read my email, and we got a new stove that they put back into the property because it said contractually they had to do it, right? Okay. Say again? You know, every class I teach on this, someone always brings up the Ring doorbell, but I just didn't think it'd be you. So here's what's interesting about a Ring doorbell. Is a Ring doorbell technically affixed to the property? You can remove them, change the battery. It doesn't screw into the wall. It's removable, right? That's a different story. What's the difference between one to the other? It's connected by the wire. So if it's connected with the wire, it would now be personal property because removing it would damage the home. Did you guys know that we created a new solar addendum? You didn't have enough paperwork, and we wanted to give you one more piece just to see how it would go. And so someone asked me in the class the other day, they said, when do I use the solar addendum? And so the answer that I got was anytime there's something in the property that you need to explain how it works. And it's through that, technology stage. Does it use an email? Does it use Wi-Fi? Do you have access to it where if they leave the house, that client now doesn't have access to it itself? How about cameras? Would you feel a little uncomfortable if you bought a home that had cameras in it and the old owner has the access? I mean, that'd be like weird, right? That'd be like going to an Airbnb and not knowing exactly what's been happening, right? Okay, so let's talk, you'll get that later. Let's talk about CC&Rs. Let's talk about CC&Rs. When do I have to order CC&Rs as a listing agent? I didn't hear you. What'd you say? 2 days. Why? Because the contract says so, that's right. But why else do I really need to order it within 2 days? Because the association has 10 days, not 10 business days, even though they try to tell you that. They have 10 days to provide you with a package if it's not ordered on a rush. And so if I'm in a 15-day escrow or a 20-day escrow, and I wait until after the home inspection, which took 10 days to happen, and I now order the package, and now it's 10 days beyond that, who caused my client to default on the contract? I did, right? But have you ever heard an agent say, well, we're gonna wait until the earnest money shows up. That seems like a good idea. You know what? We're gonna wait until the inspection's done because we wanna make sure there's no issues before we pay hundreds of dollars for the package. Better yet, let's wait until the property appraises, and once it appraises, then we'll order it. Does that make sense? Have you seen agents do that? Show of hands, who's seen an agent do that? It happens all the time, and they've now put their client in jeopardy because they've defaulted on their contractual obligation or their contract. So let me ask you this. How do you tell the client when you go to list the home that they're gonna have to pay for a package? Just tell them, there's hundreds of dollars coming my way from you and let you know right now, right? How do you show them? How do you get them to acknowledge it? Net sheet. That's the perfect answer, John, net sheet. When I list a home, I'm obligated under the duties owed to account for their money. And so when I list that home for $500,000, one of the items that I should put on the net sheet is $1,000 for the 2 HOA packages that they may have to pay for up front on their credit card, not like later. What could you do as the agent? You could pay it. Why would you ever do that? That actually is a really good answer to that question. Let me ask you, do you think it would be service to the client if I made sure that they didn't have to shell out dollars for a package and I could handle it all seamlessly without them even having to worry about it? Would that be a service that you'd want from your realtor? What happens if the deal doesn't close? You'll know a lot about that homeowners association, won't you? The whole point is, and I did this for years for my clients. Why you gotta jump ahead? I got a whole script down here, and you took away all the jokes in between here and there. No, you're absolutely right. He said I could put something in the contract to tell my seller that if this deal cancels for any reason, they're going to reimburse me for the package, right? It's always fun to be a bill collector with your clients. It really helps for referrals. But I think you're right, because I've done that and I've had a deal cancel and the client says to me, hey, listen, I'll reimburse you for that package. We actually changed the law. Before, the packages were only good for 30 days. Now they're good for how long? 90 days. So hopefully, if you got one offer already and now you bought this package, you're a great real estate agent. You're going to sell this home really quickly, right? And now it's good for 90 days. What would have to happen for the package to be good for longer? Ooh. So what do associations do on a quarterly basis usually? They have meetings, right? And the reason the package is now out of date is because the quarterly meeting minutes are not in there, or the updated budget reports. The other thing that associations have started to do that is actually a little concerning, do you know that associations have final inspections on properties now so that they can find the things that you're not doing, so they can fine you for them before a new owner comes in, and then they can fine them for them, right? So they do an inspection. It's something that's actually started to happen quite often. Do you know that title and escrow do an inspection of the property in some cases? They want to make sure there's no repairs or construction going on, like you burn down the garage and there's, a major construction going that they have to insure the title on. They actually do a report and search.
I did see that addition on RPA where it says final inspection of the HOA.
Yeah.
Is that a separate fee? Like, do the HOA charge extra now for it?
Some do, some don't know about it, right? So some actually charge a fee to you through the demand. Right? It's in the demand, it's there. Some charge an independent fee because they have to hire somebody. I don't know who they hire. I mean, like, there's a whole group of people out there waiting for this. It's like a BPO, right? You go out to the property and you check. And sometimes they do it internally. They just go and check these things out and that's all they have for it. And so, yes, Tamara.
On that, because we're going through one of those right now where didn't even know this was a thing, and we're due to close Thursday.
Yep.
Still haven't received the HOA package, which, I've gotten the association every day, like, where's the package, where's the package? Amy has everything, and we were just told that it's still waiting to be inspected by the HOA, and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
And here we're 20-some days into the contract, and they still haven't even inspected this.
Crazy, huh?
Do we, what's our recourse in that? Like, do we complain to the HOA?
Yeah, so I love that you asked this question, because here's what people forget about. Who runs the HOA? Do you really feel like you do? Right? You send that payment every single month and not even a thank you, right? But technically you do. The homeowners run the association through a management company that puts rules and regulations in, right? Who tells the management company what to do with the association? The HOA board. Have you ever gone to an HOA board meeting? I mean, as realtors, have you ever done it? Show of hands, who's really done it? Wow. Is anyone in here on their HOA board? Not anymore, not since they kicked you off? It's okay. So, believe it or not, Tom Blanchard is on his HOA board in his community. I mean, like, he runs for multiple things, right? It's a little scary. He goes on trips with them too, but it's only like to Barstow or Bakersfield, just really close. I hope he's watching this meeting because I have jokes here about him. That HOA board has the ability to overturn decisions made by the management company as long as it's legal. And so in cases like that, when you can't get a response and you can't get an answer, the best thing you can do is call the HOA president and say, I have a homeowner that's selling their home in here and they can't get any help. Will you please help us out? They're part of the public just like you, and they should be willing to help out. If not, then you run against them in the next election cycle.
How do you find that as president of the HOA if you're listening again? How do you find that?
So believe it or not, every association has to provide you, the management company has to provide you with that information as part of the meeting minutes of the group. And so they have to actually publish the information from the election, who won that election. It's in the meeting minutes that come from the HOA. So if you got the package, in that package, yeah, I'll get there. In that package, it has it. It's also, Dave, are you going to say it's recorded?
It's also with the Secretary of State consider corporate entities. So you can just do a search for the name and pull the officers that way.
The only problem with that I've seen is it doesn't always update. So that's the only issue. But They do record it in the meeting minutes, and meeting minutes usually you can get from the association because they're sending them out as updates. It's not a full package. And so you could get all of that from them. Any other questions on that before I move on? I got two other things that are just going to blow your mind. Okay, anyone ever had a client threaten them, not a client, your client, but the other agent threaten them with a lawsuit? Show of hands. Okay, so first off, the only people that smile when you threaten a lawsuit are the attorneys. Okay? Dave gets really giddy back there, like, oh, it's so fun. Anyone that's ever been through a lawsuit doesn't throw the word around because no one ever gets what they want. No one ever gets everything they thought they would, right? There's always some dropout or the floor falls out below you. The whole thing is in this contract, it says even before we sue each other, even before we get to that point, we've agreed to what? Mediate. Now, you remember it's in here because it requires that they initial it. Have you ever had an agent who just straight up threatens a lawsuit and never mentions the mediation? It happens all the time. I had a client just the other night, who's not our client, but someone who called and said, I'm so mad, I'm going to sue. And I said, okay, I'll see you at the mediation. And he says, I'm not going to no mediation. And I said, well, actually on page 6 of the contract, you agreed that you are. And you said that you would, so if you don't show up, that's okay. It's your choice. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm just putting it out there because it's so important that we made you initial next to it. What about your seller? Your seller gets so upset and they want their listing released. And I'm going to sue if you don't release it. Well, no, you're not. We're going to go to mediation first. What could a mediation be? There's no wrong answers, just wrong people. Yeah. What's mediation going to be about? Okay. Usually it's some form of financial compensation, right? They didn't get enough, they didn't get it released, something happened. Usually the only thing someone wants to hear is themselves talk. They feel that nobody cares. You don't care about me. You just send me crappy emails. You won't even listen to me when I call you. You're too busy. You're always at an open house or in a CE class. Sometimes all they want to do is get on the phone with you and show that you actually care about them personally. And most of the mediations that I've sat through, they never end the way you think they will. Okay, what about commission? Can commission go in the purchase agreement? No. Why not? I guess we've already talked about this before. Do you think I'm still seeing it in the contract? So I just want to say it one more time. That literally happened right when I said that. That was perfect. One more time or I'll turn the lights off. Commission cannot go in the purchase agreement in a residential transaction. It's a violation of the Code of Ethics because the parties contracting in the purchase agreement are not the parties agreeing to the commission. Commission is between the listing broker and the seller. It's not even between the buyer's agent broker. That comes later. That comes because you, as the listing agent, put a co-op into the MLS that we as the company now have to stand behind or they can arbitrate against us. And so I just want to make sure that's clear. Now, why did I say only residential? Do you know the majority of commercial members, commercial licensees in the state, actually are not realtors? So they're not bound by the Realtor Code of Ethics. And so in many cases in commercial transactions, commission is listed in the letter of intent and it's listed in the contract. But they're also not typically co-opting a commission. And so I just want to make that point clear because I get agents every now and then that say, well, I got this LOI and commission's in it. They're not bound by the same conditions, so that's the difference. Can you just do commercial anytime you want? Why not?
With your broker's permission.
So we require here at Signature, and I want to say this for the people in the back of the room, you have to have a rider to your ICA proving your competency level and your history to do commercial because of the liability factor. The liability on a $30 million commercial deal isn't going to be covered by a $2 million E&O policy. And they're not just going to sue for a little, they're going to sue for it all, right? That's a company ender. And so the reason why we just don't let people just do it is because we need that rider to prove that we've done our due diligence as a brokerage in checking your background and your ability and making sure, what did you say, stay in your scope? There's like 7 or 8 variations of commercial. And just because you did one deal in 1985 doesn't make you able to do all of them, okay? And so that's why that's important. If you would like to find out more about that, reach out to one of the office managers and they can share with you that information. Last but not least, what's the first document that must be signed in a real estate transaction? Okay, duties up. So when does it get signed? Well, I mean, like I'm sending over, you know, a buyer broker agreement, and I put my duties owed in first, but they're in it together. Is that okay? Show of hands, who typically does that? Sends them all over together. I do. But what's wrong with that? Say? Lazy. I'm not lazy. You don't know me. Here's the problem with that, and it's one that I don't really agree with, but I can understand. A couple years ago, a real estate commissioner, I'm not going to name his name, said when he was going through a file, now by the way, the file that they were reviewing had nothing to do with the duties owed. Like it was a completely separate thing. It was just a complaint from a consumer. And the first thing they do when they get that complaint is they call your brokers and say, send us the file. And that's where the real fun starts, because if they don't have someone that reviews it, they just send it over, they start looking at everything you may have not thought that you did, right? So this commissioner is looking at this file and he noticed that the duties owed was signed at 9:30 a.m. and the entire 11-page purchase agreement was completed and signed at 9:30 a.m. So the commissioner turned to the agent and said, explain to me how you were able to explain to your client all of the duties that you owe them and an 11-page purchase agreement in the course of 59 seconds. And the agent began to stutter. And they said, well, it's my signature system that sends it out. They could have taken some extra time and explained to me how you told them all of the duties you owe them and went through this purchase agreement. And the agent couldn't do it, and guess what? The agent got fined. And so it made me rethink a little bit the way that I send my documents out. And so I'm just putting out a suggestion. If I meet my client and I know that I'm going to put them into a BBA, what could I put between the duties owed and the BBA that could be in the middle that would allow some time to pass? Da, da, da. Anyone want to take a stab at it? What should I give them when they're going to go buy something? A net sheet. Yes, ding, 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 ding. Great job. So the whole point is if I do my duties owed, and I've explained it to them, and I provide them with a net sheet telling them what the costs will be, do you think that's important when someone buys? Would you guys buy stuff without being told how much it costs? Sometimes you would. I've seen you do it. And then I have the contract. If I put those in that process, and they all are time-stamped individually, I could actually tell the division that I went through these steps and made that happen. Would you feel better about that? Thomas? Yeah. What does the net sheet say at the top of it? Doesn't matter. But what does it say? Estimate. If I go to a car dealership and I look at the nicest car at the dealership and I've got champagne taste with beer money, but I look at it, what does it say on the sticker on the car? Yeah, it has a suggestion. Because you believe the price that's on the suggested thing, right? And so that's the whole point. It's a consumer protection item that if you come in and meet with me and you're like, well, I'm thinking I want to be around $500 to $1 million, I'm going to do a net sheet at $1 million to show you what the costs may be. And as we go through the process, I'm going to make it more specific to what happens. Let's just talk about the net sheet for a minute because you brought it up. Technically, I have to provide a net sheet under the guidelines of the law every time the price changes, because that changes your net. Technically, I'm supposed to provide a net sheet as we go through the repair inspection, and you agree to do additional repairs, because that changes your net. Technically, I'm supposed to give you a net sheet when the close date changes because your prorations are different. I should probably be doing like 15 net sheets throughout the course of the transaction, right? But I don't. Yes. By the way, Brian's still here, or anyone from Chicago I can't see yet. Both of them have apps. that allow you to do a net sheet right on your phone. It takes less than a minute. You can email it to somebody, you could text it to somebody. I complete them and I put them into the signature app and I send them into the client chat so that there's a history of me doing them. And I literally saved a template that has all of my fee structures in it, and I just send them out each time I have one that happens. And I have the client initial it that it happened. Any questions on net sheets? Nothing at all? Okay, I'm gonna bring Shelly up for just a minute. I literally have 10 minutes. Let's give Shelly another round of applause.
Hot seat.
So the reason I asked Shelly to come up here, she has no idea what this is about, by the way. Over the course of the last several transactions that I've helped agents with, I've noticed that the business has changed a little bit when it comes to the lender relationship. And what has happened is that lenders and underwriters, no offense, have started asking for things that don't make a lot of sense. I had a transaction just recently where they started dictating things that they want to see in the contract. And so what I love about Prosperity is Shelly actually, and you do as well, you've called me like 3 or 4 times. It was not something I did wrong, but you know, they call you up and actually ask you questions instead of tell you things, right? And I think that's important with a lender. What are you seeing in your industry that is causing all of this weird crap to come up? Why do you think that is?
So one of it, I think, is it's just like the ham in the oven story. Have you ever heard that? Like, why do you cut the edge of the ham? Like, the daughter goes in and says to their mom, they're making their Thanksgiving dinner, and she cuts off the edge, puts it in the oven. The daughter goes, why do you cut the edge off? She's like, I don't know. My mom used to cut the edges off when she put it in the oven. Well, grandma comes over and says, Grandma, why do you cut the edges off of the ham when you put it in the oven? She's like, well, we couldn't fit the ham into the oven back in the days. And so that's why they cut the edge. So I think a lot of that is that we're all in this mentality of like, guidelines have never changed over the course of time. And even in the last year, guidelines have changed. Even in the last month, we see continuous guideline changes. So I think that's one of them. I also think, sometimes we're in a different environment where a lot of people maybe grew up in the stated income, fast and easy, straight to docs type of environment. And over the course, actually after the 2012, 13-ish timeframe, we went back into full doc. And the definition of full doc changes between investors, changes between lenders. Some lenders are very true to guidelines. And then there's some lenders who have what they call these overlays. And some of those overlays are things that you can't really get past, right? And it's going to be different between lenders.
So in the transaction I'm talking about, the lender, it wasn't you, had nothing to do with you. The lender called up the agent and said, I want you to cancel the BBA because my underwriter doesn't want you to have one.
Oh.
What the hell does the underwriter have to do with us having a contract between the buyer for service, right? It's not even something that really falls into it, but this underwriter said, I just don't think they're good ideas. You would never say that, would you? No, never. And so the funny thing is the agent just kind of went through the process and said, okay, we'll take care of that. And my whole thing was, no, don't. We need to talk to someone in management and kind of explain the situation. I had it just last year, a lender, not you, and never would talk to this person again, started telling the buyer that they're overpaying for the realtor service and don't pay any of those transaction fees, they're just junk. You guys would love to work with that lender, right? And so what I did is I took the net sheet and I pointed out all of the fees the lender charges in the transaction, and I said, here's some more junk for you, right? And so the agent got really upset, and she said, I can't believe that the lender that I'm working with would sabotage me in the transaction. And it was because the lender in question had only been doing it for about 6 months, and they had no idea really what was going on. And so the reason I brought Shelly up is to explain her side of it, but it's important to have a professional that understands what we do. They understand our purchase agreement because they're stuck here in these meetings listening to us talk about it. But share this information with your lender. Share the fact that the contract says this is their obligation contractually, because most people don't do that. They just get upset and they send out emails and they're crappy about it, but they never actually take the contract and say to the lender, well, it says this on page 3, what do you think of that, right? Would that help explain it to most people, you think? Would that be fitting? Wouldn't you want that treatment?
Yeah, I think from a partnership standpoint, there's always the rule of like stay in your own lane, but I do believe that you should understand each other's lanes so that you can talk to it. And truly, in a relationship, you should be there to be lifting each other up because you're the team. I always tell everybody, like, you're hiring me to be part of your team, and this is what I bring to your team. Vice versa, though, right? So even I've had clients that are like, hey, what about this on the real estate contract? I will always say, defer them back to my realtor. I'll always build them up just so that they, if that's a great question for Amy, for Stephanie, for Angela, that's definitely their expertise. And, even if they're like, but what do you think? Like, I think that's a great question for them. And vice versa, right? I also have realtors who will say the same thing, like, that's a great question that you need to ask Shelly. So it stays outside of their scope and they stay, 100% tuned into what they should be talking about.
Craziest thing I ever got asked for was 5 years ago, we were doing a deal and they asked for the buyer's high school diploma.
There could be reasons for that.
The buyer says, I don't even know where it's at, And,
when they're older?
Yeah, they were a little bit older, and it had been sometimes like Grease was going on when they were in high school. And so, but yeah, they have no idea why they would ask for it, but it was an underwriter condition on this loan that they have a high school diploma and provide it.
I do think there definitely is something to say as far as the expertise that you have. So, I mean, not to toot our own horn, but we've been in the business for a very long time, and one of the things that we have a great opportunity at is we can talk directly to our investors and to our underwriters, our head underwriter. In fact, I can jump on the phone if there's something that's crazy, and I have, and many times defended positions on where I believe that a condition should be, because sometimes they'll just like, this feels like a good condition on an underwriting thing, and if it's not true to the guideline, Jennifer and I are great at masterminding around this. We will have those conversations with underwriters. Some lenders just don't have the ability or even know to push back on those things. But also in the 20 plus years that I've been in the business, I have seen a few things and ways that we can get deals done. And so a lot of times when I'm asking questions, it's so that I can help to navigate the best way to get that loan in and approved.
Very cool. Thank you.
No,
appreciate
thank you.
it. Any questions on any of the stuff we talked about today? Comments? Anything at all? Anything else? Janet?
Yes, I just want to say on the property, the three things that aren't listed there are washer, dryer, and refrigerator as staying with the property. And I had an agent in my office who the buyer's primary condition, elderly couple moving themselves from Chicago, the house they bought had to have a refrigerator, washer, and dryer. And we looked at things where the MLS sheet said, refrigerator, why, washer, dryer, why. So they made an offer, got it accepted, went back to Chicago, packed up their little U-Haul with the stuff they were moving to Las Vegas, and showed up in time to do the walkthrough. They go to the walkthrough, the refrigerator, the washer, and dryer are gone.
Of course, yeah.
So the agent calls the listing agent and said, you said you were leaving the washer, dryer, and refrigerator. He said, my seller was willing to leave them, but you didn't ask for them in the contract, so he thought you didn't want them and he sold them. So if your clients want washer, dryer, refrigerator,
write them in.
Write it in.
So for those that didn't hear that in the very back, Janet was talking about the fact that it's your responsibility. If something's important for your buyer that you ask for in the contract, but I'm going to take it a step further because this actually happened to me. I was selling a house in Club Aliante, and if you've ever been in those houses, they have the big monogram GE profile Sub-Zero fridges, right? They're $7,000 fridges. I mean, I didn't really think it was like $7,000. I was like, really? $7,000 fridge. And so when I was writing the offer for my client, who was paying cash, by the way, I wrote GE monogram stainless steel Sub-Zero fridge in the contract. I kid you not. When we get to the house to do the walkthrough after he had driven down from Canada, in place of the Sub-Zero is a GE stainless steel fridge that was not a Sub-Zero. There was a hole, and inside of it is this little fridge. And so I called up the other agent. I said, in the contract it says stainless steel GE Sub-Zero monogram fridge, and we don't have that. And the agent couldn't argue with me because I had written all of that crap in. And so I saved my client from having to fight legally over a $7,000 fridge, and it probably would have come out of my commission, right? And so I don't like to give up my money, and I think that's a huge point, Janet, is that be specific on the important things in the deal, because that will keep your client out of court, right? Any final questions?
Well, the main thing I always say is the MLS printout is an advertisement,
Yes.
it's not a contract.
Yes. And so people always say at the bottom of it, it says this information is deemed, you know, unreliable or whatever. That is not for your protection as the agent, as a listing agent or buyer's agent. That is the protection of the MLS service. And so you can't use that as a get out of jail free card, right?
Well, maybe you can also take it a little bit further, that all these appliances have to be working.
Yeah.
Because they could stay there, and because our inspectors won't check on the washer, dryer, I mean, unless we ask them to.
Sure.
That's not on their checklist, that they have to be working. Otherwise, put it on your own warranty.
Yeah.
You know, because that's happened to me, you know, where.
So Vilma said these items need to be working, and so the point is there is a clause in the purchase agreement that says the property's condition must be maintained. Now, has there been an issue where you close and this AC unit that's been there for 6 years, never had a problem, blows out the day of closing? I don't know if it's my luck or just if things happen to me, but it does happen. I went to do a walkthrough one time, and I don't know why. I'm the property manager, taking the property over for my client. My father is the listing agent, right? So we're related. And I go out in the backyard and I walk around and I just happen to turn the corner and look, and there's no AC unit. It had been taken. It had been strategically relocated, as they said on the insurance form. And so luckily, because we were doing the walkthrough, I noted it. We were able to call the REO bank. They replaced it immediately. The deal closed. But if I hadn't done that full walk, that thing would have been gone, and that would have been an insurance nightmare to have it replaced, right? And so those small things really do matter. It matters what you spend your time on. Anything else? Was this helpful? Yes, sir.
I just got another new listing that home talked to.
During a sales meeting. You're on fire.
It's 1,272 square foot, single story over off of Rancho and Rainbow.
Nice.
2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. It's going to be listed at 350.
350. Fantastic. Rancho and Rainbow. 1,256 square feet, you said? 72 square feet. Awesome. Sell it fast. All right, guys. Just a reminder, if you need any help, anything on a transaction, please reach out to Janet, myself, Andrew, Tom, Brandon, wherever he may be. He's traveling for the board, and we're here to help you. Thank you so much. Have a great week. And don't forget, breakfast is still over here. I did note.